Version 2.4 is almost here, and Yunli will be on the first phase banner, the new 5-star physical destruction unit who functions exactly like Clara. If you plan to pull for Yunli, then this video will help discuss her best Lightcones, Relics, Teamcomps, and Eidolons. So how does her signature Lightcone compare to her other options? Well, it's much better than everything else, because not only does it give her crit damage and follow-up damage percent, but it also increases taunt by a lot, letting her get hit much more often and triggering her follow-ups more frequently. Her signature has insane value, and can be used on other characters as well, like Clara or Blade. But if you don't plan to pull for it, then these alternatives are weaker, but still usable. Fall of a Neon, a Secret Vow at S5, Under the Blue Sky at S5 is okay, and even Clara's signature is okay, but none of these compare to her signature. For reference, her signature gives 500% taunt value, while Jeopard's Lightcone only gives 200%, and Lynx's Scale gives 350%, so she is one of the characters that almost requires her signature Lightcone, unfortunately, but of course you can still play her without it. Next up, Yunli's best Relic Sets. Of course, it's the newest set, Windsoaring Valorous. It gives attack percent, crit rate, and alt damage percent when doing follow-ups. Perfectly designed for her. For alternatives, you can honestly use anything as placeholders because nothing else comes close in performance. I really encourage you to farm this set. If you have a good Grand Duke set, then use it temporarily. Now for her planar ornaments, Durin is by far her best in slot. She builds stacks super easily. As placeholders, you can use Inert Salsado to buff her alt and follow-ups. Keep in mind though, this performs a lot worse, so only use it as placeholders for farming. Also, Sigonia is okay for pure fiction. Now, main stats, Yunli is super simple. She wants crit rate or damage on the body, whatever you need more of, but do keep in mind that her follow-ups get 120% crit damage when she ults, so crit rate will have a bit more value. Attack percent on the boots because she doesn't need speed. Physical orb as she is a physical unit and gets attack percent elsewhere, making an attack percent orb less valuable. Then attack percent on the rope. Although energy regen helps her because her damage is completely locked to her ult, the damage you'll lose is a little too big to be worth running it. However, there's some situations where it might be better. In general, just use attack percent. Then substats, standard DPS build, crit first, attack second, survivability last, nothing else matters. Okay, now we're moving on to team comps. She has some pretty fun options, but there are some important notes I need to mention really quickly. Firstly, it is important to position her in the middle of your comp next to your sustain to allow her to get hit as much as possible. And for her sustains, it is best to use an abundance character over preservation as they have less aggro, but if you're in content where enemies have AoE attacks, then run a preservation. It doesn't really matter. So let's cover her sustain options. Lynx will be really good if you don't have her light cone. Huohuo is really good because she provides energy on top of other buffs, and Adventuring is pretty good. Also, Preservation March is an option that works if anyone still uses her, but Yunli's best sustain will be Huohuo. Then for her support options, Robin is insane for her, Topaz is really good, and Tingyun is almost essential. Remember, keeping her ult up as much as possible decides how much damage she's doing. Then some other weaker supports can be Bronya, Sparkle, Pela, even Jade in pure fiction. If you're looking for the best Yunli hypercarry comp, then it would be Robin, Yunli, Huohuo, and Tingyun. If you're looking for a really fun comp, the one I'll be using, then use Robin, Yunli, Clara, Huohuo. Honestly, I want to try this comp, hopefully it works. Finally, we're onto Yunli's Eidolons. E1 increases damage from her follow-ups by 20% and increases her parry follow-up extra hits by 3. So it goes from 6 extra hits to 9. Overall, it's a really big DPS increase. It's a solid E1. E2, when countering with a follow-up attack, the attack ignores 20% defense. As most people know, defense ignore is one of the strongest mechanics in the game. This Eidolon is also a massive DPS increase. Not quite as good as E1, but if you're willing to spend some extra jades, E2 is a really good stopping point. E4, when Yunli does a follow-up, she gains 50% effect resistance. This Eidolon sucks and is really niche. E6, after she ults and the next action is an enemy's turn, Yunli will do a follow-up regardless of whether or not she gets hit. On top of that, when she deals damage with her follow-ups, she gains 15% crit rate and 20% physical resistance penetration. As usual, every DPS's E6 just breaks them and turns them into nukers. Overall, Yunli is a character that requires a lot to function well, unfortunately. Yes, she is a better Clara. No, she doesn't need her light cone. Try to use Lynx instead, but in terms of S1 or E1, pull her light cone. It's completely broken and universal.